Okay.
Okay, everyone, welcome to today's edition of the Gripe Session podcast. And obviously, as you heard the last couple of weeks, I was going to have some more guests on. Today is no different. This past week, we had on former Mets manager Terry Collins, who I met in fantasy camp. And guess what? We have another person I met in Mets fantasy camp this year, first year that I've met him. And it's former New York Mets pitcher Glendon Rusch. Glendon, what's going on, pal?
Nothing. I'm doing great. Back from fantasy camp in the freezing weather, like most of us, and just getting ready for the holidays.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We definitely appreciate you coming on. So we want to thank you first and foremost for that. We definitely do appreciate it. So, Glennon, give everybody a little bit of an idea as to how you got your start in the majors and in professional baseball, and tell them a little bit about your journey.
Okay, I grew up in Seattle, high school draft pick by Kansas City, out of Seattle, Washington, and then ended up signing with the Royals and started my minor league journey in '93. And I was a rookie, came up with Kansas City in '97. So made it through the minor leagues pretty quick, and then was fortunate enough to get a bunch of big league experience at a young age before I was traded to the Mets in '99.
Nice. Very nice. And so what would you say as far as your, once you got called up to the show, can you talk about kind of where you were and how that whole transpired and what your feelings were when that happened?
I actually in '97, that was my first year on the 40-man roster with Kansas City, and I did something that's pretty unusual and actually really hard to do. Is I made the roster out of spring training in my first year on the 40-man. So as a 22-year-old, I got the good news from Bob Boone, who was my manager at the time, grabbed me and pulled me aside. We were playing in exhibition games in Colorado and told me that I had made the team and I was going with them to Baltimore to open up the season. So pretty exciting news, news that you always dream of. So it was a little different than, guys that you hear the story where they were pulled into the office or, told from the minor leagues that they were getting called up to the big leagues. I actually was still in big league spring training, and it was a matter of I was either getting on a flight to go to Omaha to AAA or getting on the big league charter to go to Baltimore. So fortunately, I was on number two.
That's great. So obviously this year is, the first year that you and I met down in fantasy camp. Can you talk a little bit about your experience down at fantasy camp? Obviously, for us, it's the opportunity to kind of feel what you all went through when you first see your uniform hanging for the first time and in the locker room, and especially as rookies, you kind of, it's the one memory that keeps coming back and back and back, and then as you go through it, it's more about the relationships and the hijinks that go on in the clubhouse and that kind of stuff. So can you talk about a little about your experience at camp and, what you think about it all?
I had been told about fantasy camp for years and years and years from multiple guys that have done it with different organizations and everything else. And for quite a while, the Mets guys had told me, hey, we want to try and get you to come down one year. And I've always said, all right, I'm ready when you guys are. And you know how it is. It's kind of the same group of guys. And unless somebody can't make it or they need somebody new to come down, it's kind of hard to get into. So I was really lucky that this year they invited me and I was able to do it. I'll tell you what, when I got down there, just being back in the clubhouse as a a coach with you guys and seeing all the relationships that you guys have built over the years, guys that have done it for a long time, and then some guys were new, you got rookies, you got veterans, but it was just as fun for me to be back down there, putting on a uniform, hanging out with the clubhouse guys, the training staff, the other coaches, all you guys as players. It was a blast. I had an absolute great time, and I would have loved to do both weeks. I couldn't fortunately do week one, but it was everything I expected and more. I had a great time, and I really hope that I'm able to do it next year.
Well, we always say, you get to the best week, which is week two. We always have this back and forth thing between week one and week two that, week two has more fun. So that could end up on a t-shirt. It might not. I don't know. We're kind of, in some development stages, if you will. But that being said, what if you or when you were in the majors? There's always a question that goes on at camp, and I love all the coaches that come down. You were great. Everyone that's come down is great, and that's quite frankly Doug Dickey's probably one of his biggest problems. Right? Is there's so many good people to bring to camp that it's kind of like, all right, for like, if I have somebody, it sometimes means I gotta not have somebody, which sometimes makes it more difficult, right? If you were a current player, okay, and I had this conversation with Josh Tolley about a year or two ago. Did you ever hear about camp back then when you were a player? And if you did, knowing now what you know, would you obviously come down now because, you've seen the environment, you've seen that type of situation?
Well, I think it's funny you just interviewed TC, and I think TC is a perfect example. Like, he's not necessarily hands-on involved in the camp, but he was there almost every day, hanging out, walking around the fields, chatting with guys, and he loved that atmosphere and being around everybody. So I heard it about it a lot when I was a player, because generally the coaches that that we're dealing with in the minor leagues or in the big leagues, a lot of those guys do it. Those are your guys. So a bunch of them had talked about it, had a great time. I'll tell you this, I don't see any way that anybody does a better job than Doug Dickey and Doug Flynn running the whole camp, and those guys do. I mean, that's first class. It's you guys get treated like you're major league players for a week, and it's pretty awesome with the food, training staff, the stuff we did at night with Kangaroo Court, and the dinners, all that stuff, hanging out was a lot of fun.
Oh, 100%. Doug, on this podcast, I think Doug Dickey has the most amount of shout outs on this podcast, and we always make sure we cannot not go a podcast, and I did it with TC this past week with the trainers, Vanessa, and the rest of the people in the training room, as well as the clubbies with Molly and my buddy Chilo. They always do the best job with us, and I sell for a living. I sell real estate. It's what I do every single day. And I tell people when they ask me about camp is I sell every day for a living, but this is something I can't sell enough, because I could tell you everything about it and my experience and how much it's become like a family of people. There are people I talk to at camp, coaches that I talk to the entire year. But until you go through it, you don't understand what camp is all about. And Doug does just a phenomenal job. And we also saw Jay Horowitz down there a bunch of times too, a couple of times a week too. And I'm like, holy cow! Yeah, it looks like the gang's all here now. The only person we're missing is Uncle Steve Cohen. Yeah, he might have to come down a little bit and kind of hang out with us and kind of go from there. But
I could definitely see him joining for sure. I think he'd probably enjoy it.
Absolutely. Oh, I think he would absolutely enjoy it. I think it's one of those camps where from people that have done other camps have always come back and said this is by far one of the best run camps all across the majors. So, but we definitely appreciate that. So, a lot of the people that watch and listen to this podcast are kids that I've coached throughout the years, whether it's been in Little League or they've been travel ball, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, there's a lot of travelable situations where people can go in 15 different places, and the trainers and all the things that people have nowadays. Being somebody that's been to where everybody's goal is to get, what would be the best advice that you could give not only to parents but also kids as to somebody wants to do this as their profession? What would be the best advice that Glendon Rusch would have for people?
Well, one thing I always stress I'm around a lot of kids. I've got a freshman in high school and I've got a freshman in college. They're both playing baseball. I've been around a ton of youth teams over the years. One thing I always stress to them, and part of it's because it was hard for me to do it at times, is to actually slow down and take time to enjoy what you're doing. In any sport, but especially in baseball, we take time to say, hey, I really embrace and enjoy these workouts and getting better and, getting to know my teammates and becoming a better player and getting ready for the games. All that stuff sometimes goes by so quick and you get caught up in the grind of what you're doing and you forget to actually enjoy it. So that's the thing. Look, everyone's careers are short, no matter how long we get to play. I got to play a really long time professionally. I was lucky, but I was still done, in my mid-30s. So, it goes quick, and realistically, the percentages of guys that get to play as long as I did is really, really small. So for those youth players and guys get to play in high school and at the collegiate level, enjoy it. Work hard, be the best you can be a good teammate, control all the stuff you can control, which is, hustling, being a good teammate, showing up on time, all the stuff that's important that you can control every day. Take care of all that, and the rest of the stuff will take care of itself. You'll perform as best you can, and you, at the end of the day, you'll be content with that, happy with how you did it.
And one of the things that I've said a lot to a lot of people, quite honestly, is a lot of the young kids that I talk to, is at some point, somebody tells you it's time to stop. It's time to stop playing, the game that you wanted to play, whether it be you can't play anymore, you're not good enough to play anymore, or whatever that happens to be. So when you go out there and have fun and enjoy it, kind of like we do at camp now, where we've been told we can't play anymore, but we still find a way, and some of us can't, but we still find a way to get out there, enjoy ourselves, enjoy our teammates, and kind of go from there. So that's definitely terrific.
Yeah, look at the last day of camp. We've got myself, Bill Pulsifer, Nelson Figueroa, Heath Bell. All of us are out there on the mound throwing pitches to you guys because we love it, and it's not because we had to. It was like, hey, do you guys want to do this? The campers want to face you guys. Do we want to get out there in our 40s or whatever and give it all we got? Of course, because we love it. It's fun, and I know you guys enjoyed it just as much as we did.
Yeah. Well, my biggest thing with camp is hopefully to be able to be in halfway decent enough shape that I can do it with my son, because that would be my ultimate goal, is because I've had such a good time, is to be able to try to have that experience with him. So, hopefully that'll happen once that age comes, but I got a long time to kind of go for that. So we'll have to see how that goes. But who would you say was your biggest opponent to try to pitch against? A lot of people always talk about, well, you think it's one of the big stars, or is it somebody less? Because a lot of people have had different conversations about that, where the pesky guys are the ones that he always had troubles with, but the big guys like Bonds or the big home run hitters are sometimes, not that they're more easier to face, but you had better success against them. Yeah, you're probably your biggest, if you had to name a couple of people.
One of the toughest outs I always thought that could do the most damage in the most different ways was Albert Pujols in his prime. Especially against left-handed pitching as a righty. I got to face all those guys. I didn't face Bonds a lot, not a bunch, but McGuire, Canseco, all those guys. Bernie Williams was a really tough out for me. He saw it well off me and hit me good. And then, like you were saying earlier, a lot of pesky guys, right? Like the right-handed hitting catchers, or the guys in the middle of the. I remember the Wilsons in Pittsburgh, Craig and Jack Wilson. Those guys got me good. It's just sometimes random guys like that,
Yeah. So it's and the same thing. Quite honestly, I've watched actually happen in camp. Is guys you're not expecting to do something, with, because you've either played with them or been on a team with them before, and it's like, last year they couldn't buy a hit, and meanwhile they come up and then all of a sudden it's like, what the heck happened to you in the school course of a year?
Yeah.
What did I do to you?
Yeah.
So that could coincidentally happen to me as well. So, so those things, as the expression goes, that's just the fun of the game and the fun of baseball, and I kind of go from there. So, obviously, we are at a free agent passing. The Mets have been very, very active in the free agent process. Tell me, what are your thoughts of kind of the moves they've made so far, and do you think there's any more moves left in them this year?
I don't know what else they'll do. I feel like they've kind of filled what they need. Anytime you transition out of what people are used to, with DeGrom, Bassett, and Taijuan Walker, those guys all performed well. And Jacob, I don't know if there's anybody in baseball that I automatically turn the television on to watch pitch more than Jacob DeGrom. So he will be missed. I hope he's healthy and has a great 4 years in Texas. But the way that they've kind of gone out and filled those spots with Verlander and et cetera. So I think they're going to have every bit of rotation that they need. I'm glad they brought Nimmo back. I love him. He's quite a player. And I think that they'll just continue to go on from what they did last year. The frustrating part is when you win that many games, you obviously want to go deeper in the playoffs. But pitching and defense is what wins in the playoffs. So if they've built their team around that, they're going to be fine.
Yeah. I know some of the fans have come out recently and talked about they felt they need to get another bat because that's the one thing they didn't get to do in the playoffs and that sort of thing. But again, as I've said a bunch of different times, is any given day anybody can be beat, whether it be a short series, a long series, or anything in between. And that's also the beauty of baseball. If you look at how many 100-win teams went out, and here's Philadelphia squeaking into the playoffs, making it all the way to the World Series.
Yeah. It's the hottest team, no doubt about it. When the guys that get hot at the end, I mean, when we went in 2000, we were a wild card team, and we got hot towards the end of the year. We got hot in the playoffs and played well. Who knows? You could see a guy like Alvarez step up and get a taste of it next year, and all of a sudden have a great year as another bat in the lineup too. So
yeah,
I think they've got a lot of key pieces that they need, and we know that Mr. Cohen will go out and add more if he needs to. So I think they're in great shape, and it's gonna be fun to watch. Two veteran starting pitchers go all the way back together. It's been, I guess, 7 years or so since they've been together. So it'll be fun.
What's your opinion as a former player of all of these rule changes that have been coming down? You between the shift and the time clocks and all of these other, the leading from the person on second to start the extra innings. Now they're going to have bigger bases and that sort of thing. What's your opinion on all these rule changes today?
I think it's going to be an interesting change to watch the shift thing. I think that's going to be the biggest change that you're going to see. There's two arguments to that. Everyone says, why don't you just hit the ball the other way? Well, you've got guys throwing 98-mile-an-hour sinkers in on your hands. It's not that easy. I would challenge anyone to go in the batting cage at 65 miles an hour and try and slap the ball the other way every time. It's not as easy as it looks. But the bigger bases, who knows? I don't know what that brings. Not a lot to me, really. The pitch clock, I don't think that's going to change much either. I think the biggest one's going to be the shift. Now you're going to see, I heard a guy the other day talking about if it's a straight up pull guy and you're banking that he's going to pull the ball, are we going to see somebody move their left fielder into that short right field, right? And have three outfilders in a little triangle in right field. So who knows? I would guess somebody's going to be creative with it too and do something that, you got to have two guys with their feet on the dirt on both sides of second base. It'll be interesting.
Well, we actually did that in camp this year. One of the players on my team was in a game that didn't mean anything. It was a consolation game, just busting Mr. Scalabrino's chops as the lefty. He ran all the way over from right field and says, I want to go and play behind the second baseman. I go, why are we doing this? He goes, oh, because it's fun. I'm going, he's going to go that way. I'm like, you better hope, or you better tell the pitcher to pitch him inside. And the first pitch I'm seeing, I'm watching my catcher set up over here, and I literally looked at him, I go, you're going to get that because I ain't running after it. I'm just telling you right now. The second he hits it over there, I ain't going to get it. And on clockwork, thinks it over there. I'm like, go, I'm not running for it.
Yeah.
I told you I wasn't going to get it.
Yeah.
So, but that's what, and it's funny because I've had Hojo on the podcast previously, and that was one of the things which we were talking about the shift and, hit it the other way and that sort of thing. But I think today's game is more geared towards guys get paid based off of home runs too. But if the guy doesn't hit the ball out of the ballpark and he goes the other way, it's still, they're willing to give that up as opposed to, a ball flying over the, over the thing. But even if he gets it in, it's still the same thing. It's still a base hit.
Yeah. It can be frustrating, I think, as fans for sure. You watch it and go, why can't the ball, why can't he serve the ball the other way when you got 3.5 infielders on the right side of the field? But yeah, it's sometimes it's not that easy, but you're right. At the same time, guys don't play that game that much anymore. That, you don't have Pete Rose type hitters, or, I think of one of the guys I played with that was one of the best I've ever seen was Juan Pierre. Juan Pierre could hit the ball everywhere, bunt the ball on both sides of the mound. I mean, he caused havoc, and I think there's a shortage of those types of players now, and that's the way the game's gone. And I don't think we're going to change it. I don't think it's going to go back to that way ever, because everyone is in the mode they are in now. Velocity is higher than it's ever been. And you combine that with the guys that swing the way they do, there's more home runs, less base hits, less going the other way. It's just the way the game is.
Do you think that depending upon, as in the past is always seen, is when people talk about buying players, right, and getting value for your players, until it was shown with Moneyball, with, that you can get, you're basically trying to pay for wins and people doing all of those extra things and the little things, and that's the thing that makes winners and championships. Do you think it might have a possibility to go back the other way if you get a team that goes out there and just plays small ball, if you will? I mean, that's the easiest way to say it. I think that's the only way that we could possibly go back there, where teams look at that and go, hell, we don't need that big guy hitting 40, 50, 60 home runs. We need guys putting the ball in play.
Yeah, which I think the argument is that could be okay and might do fine during the 162, but that ain't winning in the World Series. It's not. And if you look back at the actual Moneyball teams, they had 3 aces on that team too.
Yeah. Everyone
talks about the on-base percentage and the role players and everything else, but when you had Barry Hudson, Mark Mulder, and Tim Hudson, I mean, those guys are going to beat anybody. And they didn't really get, I think that is the deepest they got, the divisional series, or did they get to a ALCS even? So I think that's the biggest argument. And you see that the teams that win the World Series every year have outstanding pitching at the front end. They have great bullpens, play good defense, and they've got some guys that can hit the ball out of the ballpark in a timely manner. And not only that, they generally play more of a standard. Like, look at this year's team. Dusty Baker he's playing kind of a standard, game of baseball that's you could consider on the older school style too. I think he's marrying in the analytics and the numbers and what they're telling him with the lineup and everything else. But at the same time, he uses the eye test, and he does it as well as anybody.
Well, I'm actually glad you brought up managers and analytics. Do you think the game is getting away from some of what used to make the really good managers, like your Jimmy Lelands and your McKeons and some of those other, back maybe Davey Johnsons, even Terry Collins, the ones that kind of would look at the analytics but go based off of feel and how things were and that kind of thing? Because I think it almost feels like managers nowadays they're basically almost like, okay, it's like a video game. Here's your lineup. This is what you're playing. And then kind of go from there. Like, it's almost not their lineup anymore.
Yeah, it's gone that way in some organizations for sure. But I guarantee you, Buck Showalter, Dusty Baker, all these older school guys that they're getting all the numbers from the analytics department, but they're also doing, there's some gut feel involved in some of that stuff too. And it's a human game. Nobody's robots. You can't predict everything that's going to happen. Do those numbers help? Absolutely. Did we use a different version of that 20 years ago? Yes. We had, but we don't have as much information as they have now at their fingertips. So that can be good and bad. I think for some players it might overload them. Some it might not. I would absolutely love playing in today's game because I love that type of information. Probably would have made me better too, because I was never an overpowering guy. So that every little edge I had, being a command pitcher in the big leagues would have helped me.
So, again, we definitely appreciate you coming on. One of the things that we do is, as part of this podcast, is we do a lightning round. Now, when normally we do a lightning round, we kind of pull a lot of different things in, but when it comes time for baseball, then we kind of pull some baseball things in and kind of go from there. So, today's lightning round, we're going to start off is DH or no DH?
No DH in the National League. Bring it back to the way it was before. I love it.
Okay. Shift or no shift?
I think the shifts should still be in play.
Okay. Pitching clock or no pitching clock?
Well, you're talking to a guy who worked quicker than maybe 99% of the guys in the league. So pitching clock wouldn't have affected me. So I don't care whether they use it or not. But speed up some of those relievers, though. Some of those guys are slow.
Listen, sometimes between the relievers or the guys coming in to hit and take 4 minutes to get in and take their time walking to the bat, I'm like, let's go. Come on. We got things to do. Let's go over a little bit here.
Yeah, talk to Howie Rose. I've thrown some of his favorite sub 2-hour games he's never seen.
I tell you, there is nothing better than and this is what I don't understand with a lot of these analytics and, the people are like, oh, we got to speed up the game because today's kids, everybody's always on their phones. They're on their phones all the time anyway. You ain't changing that. And the game's been around for as long as the game's been around. So to me, I would rather see a really good pitching game, 1-hitter, 2-hitter, as opposed to somebody hitting a 500-something foot home run and it's an 8-0 game or any of that kind of, I don't care about stuff like that. There's no excitement to it. There's no oomph, if you will.
Yeah, true baseball fans generally love a pitcher's duel here and there because they are exciting. They're fun to watch because every play matters. Every pitch matters. They're fun.
Sure. How many teams did you play with during the course of your career, by the way?
Teams. I was Kansas City first before the Mets. Then I went on to the Brewers, Cubs, Padres, Rockies.
Cubs, Padres, Rockies. Okay. Yeah. So would you say that was 6?
6 teams, yeah.
6 teams. Okay. And obviously the Mets were the best team because their fans were the best and that kind of stuff. So
I loved New York. I had a good time. I was a little intimidated at first coming from Kansas City. But I settled in there nicely and loved it.
Okay. Talk about that really quickly as far as coming from what would be perceived as a smaller market team, coming into obviously a major metropolitan market. Talk about the difference between that, because obviously a lot's being made now with Jay going from New York to Texas, and not giving the Mets a chance to counter. So I believe Jake really wanted out. That's just my opinion. Especially when you've got one of the richest owners not giving him an opportunity. So to me, it wasn't about the money, but talk about the difference in between, coming from a small market, coming into a bigger market, and the kind of adjustment that is.
Big adjustment with I think the media focus and everything that goes on when you go from a Kansas City or that type of team to New York. Fortunately, I was surrounded by great people, Jay Horowitz, of course, but great veteran players when I got to the Mets. Al Leiter, Johnny Franco, and Mike Hampton came over. All those guys were really, really good to me and kind of taught me the ropes. Even though I had a couple years under my belt in the big leagues in Kansas City, I was a youngster. I was still carrying the beer. I think my 3rd year in the big leagues with the Mets.
He should have been on my team. That would have been a good,
Not, yeah. You got to make sure there's a proper amount of beer on the bus from the airport to the hotel, etc. And the rookies do it. Or I was still considered a rookie with 3 years in the big leagues.
Wow. Okay. So then, once you came over from New York, and then once you had left New York, you had gone back to another small market team. Is that kind of an adjustment again the other way now after coming from a small to a big, then from a big to a small? Does things kind of come a little bit easier at that point?
It was. I guess there's a couple sides of it. Yes, it's easier from the pressure and to win and media perspective, but it also can be tough if you're in a losing environment. And fortunately, even though we didn't have great teams in Milwaukee, we got a great group of guys and guys that they went out every day to win. uh, with the managers we had. We had Ned Yost as an early, his first time as a big league manager, my second year there. Mike Maddox, first year as a big league pitching coach. Davey Lopes was my first manager. Unfortunately, we got him fired pretty early on. But, I think that part of it makes it way easier when you have a group of guys that, even though we weren't going to compete for the division, we were going out to win every day and played hard. So that made it better.
Okay. Well, again, we definitely appreciate having you come on the podcast. It's definitely been a lot of fun. And where are you? What are you doing with yourself nowadays?
I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. I've been here for 5+ years. I was in Southern Cal for quite a while via Seattle. I grew up there. But I'm actually working on a really cool documentary project right now with Ryan Dempster and Reed Ryan, Nolan's son, and the same producer for any of you guys that have watched Facing Nolan, the documentary about Nolan Ryan that was just out. And we are working on a project that's a little ways to go, but about the 20 strikeout games with Max Scherzer, Randy Johnson, Kerry Wood, and Roger Clemens. So we're in production on that right now. Hopefully, we're probably a year or so away, but we've completed a bunch of interviews and we're rolling. So I'm excited about it. It's the first time ever working on a project like that.
Okay. That's great. Well, definitely best of luck on that. And once that gets out there, let me know, and we'll definitely promote it here on the podcast. We'll put it in the comments later on down once that comes out. We'll make sure everybody knows about that and get it out there for you as well. But again, we definitely appreciate you coming down. Obviously, definitely appreciate you being part of the Mets family and the Mets family camp, as we affectionately refer to fantasy camp nowadays. We call it family camp. A number of months. It's been thrown about a lot, but again, we definitely appreciate you, and hopefully we'll definitely see you next year. Hopefully at camp.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.
Appreciate it.